every size. We are the mountains, we are the tide. The question whether we're destined to pay bills and die. The freedom to grow our own medicine was jettisoned. Tesla's inventions were replaced by Thomas Edison's. Well, now I'm under pressure, got questions, I wonder why. I don't see more people fighting for our sons and daughters who gotta struggle for their right to a clean glass of water, whose homes wash away while this planet gets harder. We're born into a land that we filled with slaughter. Now to tell me what's it going to take. We got our babies paying for our father's mistakes. Scientists are being science while these bankers eat cake. A person's worth should not be measured by the money they make. It's in our hearts, it's what we do, it's in our art. The love we give to others makes us who we are. You are a star, my love. You were created by stripes of every color, of every size. If you move too fast, you're gonna lose control. Fast unwind, give your spirit time to grow. Tear the old process down, freedom is our goal. Our goal, our goal, our goal. Darkness is creeping in regardless of the light that we shine on the hardest. The haters keep hating you, are immigrating, we're alienating you Martians. I can hear all the little ones' hearts and they are panic for changes. They know that we can take the one with the earth, the way the creature goes around it. The chaos, momentum will grow. You cannot control us, we're finding our flow. The road to victory's the way we will go, but we're taking our time so we know it's for sure. Take your time finding where to go. If you move too fast, you're gonna lose control. You got too fast, unwind, let your spirit go. We'll tear the oppressors down, freedom is our goal. Our goal, our goal, our goal. Thank you for tuning in to Bliss Pig Radio, everybody. We hope you enjoyed our quarantunes. We have a Mythril Media update on the way.
everyone, this is Britt with Mythril Media, joining you from quarantine in breezy Norwich, Connecticut. My partner Gabe is currently joining me from behind the camera. Today we will be updating you on a few things that are happening here around Mythril Media headquarters, as well as finishing up this episode with a special literary treat at the end of the segment. I will be reading you the first few pages of a fantasy tale, Unbowed by Cassandra Kaw, which I'm planning on reading to you in its entirety in some small bits over time, but we'll talk more about that later. Before all that, there are some important local political happenings that we want to make you aware of, especially if you are from Connecticut or Rhode Island. First, I want to make you all aware of the Connecticut House Bill 5341, an act prohibiting the sale and breeding of certain cetaceans within Connecticut. For those of you who don't know, a cetacean is the scientific name for a dolphin, whale, or porpoise, generally. And for those of you from Connecticut who may be catching on at this point, yes, that means that this bill would affect the belugas being held at the Mystic Aquarium. This legislation was introduced by the Environment Committee and was sponsored by the Stamford State Representative and well-known fellow marine animal lover, David Michael, back in February. He has made it clear that it's not the bill's intention to stop Mystic Aquarium's research during their 3 currently captive whales' lifetimes, but instead to cease all future breeding and entertainment programs, as well as prevent sales of new cetaceans within the state. House Bill 5341 saw a public hearing on Friday, March 6th, where groups of people on both sides of the issue showed up to have their voices heard. Mystic Aquarium argued that they've been researching belugas in the wild as well as in captivity for well around 35 years, and claims that even though they would be allowed to continue to research belugas in the wild after their current captives die, it would not only significantly impact their research negatively, but also impact the local economy, the tourist economy. While on the other side of things, animal activists argued that the highly intelligent and emotional animals deserve the right to experience natural lives in the wild, and that continuing to capture and breed such sentient and migratory animals into captivity is simply inhumane. All of this comes at a not so convenient time for Mystic Aquarium, as they're currently awaiting federal approval for a required permit to transfer 5 more belugas from Marineland of Canada, which if approved would bring them to 8 captive beluga whales in their care. Nothing much has happened with House Bill 5341 since that hearing in early March, more than likely due to the outbreak of COVID-19 that we're all experiencing. That being said, the bill is currently sitting in the State House awaiting for the next step towards a vote. If approved and signed by Ned Lamont, it was originally written to take effect as early as October 1st of this year. I cannot emphasize enough that this is Connecticut's chance to become a leader in the movement against cetacean captivity. We can make a difference in this fight. I encourage you to do more research about this bill, share this exciting news with others, and contact your Connecticut state representatives. Let them know that you support House Bill 5341 and that this is an opportunity for our state to be recognized as a pioneer environmental role model as by other institutions all around the world. We also wanted to briefly touch on the federal primary elections and let Connecticut and Rhode Island voters know that our primaries have been moved to June 2nd in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. If you're registered, please make sure to contact the registrar at your town hall to double check where you need to go to vote. If you're not sure if you're registered, you can check online. All you have to do is search "Am I registered?" followed by your state into whatever search engine you prefer, and there will be a link to your state government's websites in the results that can help you figure it out. If you know that you're not registered and you'd like to be, and this includes anyone age 17 from Connecticut and Rhode Island who will be turning 18 by November, you are eligible to vote in your primary. You can do that online too. Just search online voter registration followed by your state, and there will be a link to your state government's website that can help you do that too. And if everyone stays as safe as they can be and the show goes on, we will be holding a voter registration drive before the primary election, as planned at a local event still to be determined. Now, as far as Mythril Media content is concerned, we have a few creative tutorials for you to enjoy that are on the editing block and will be posted very soon, including watching me dye a dozen eggs to celebrate spring, as well as watching me paint a Dungeons & Dragons elf miniature to celebrate tiny details. We also are planning on doing some more video game content, including maybe possibly Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth on the new 3DS XL, probably New Horizons, and Smash Ultimate on the Switch Lite. I don't know, we'll see. Alrighty then, now, if I may, for the final event, I'd like to move on to concluding this update with a reading of the beginning of the fantasy tale Unbowed by Cassandra Kaw. There are a couple things you, the audience, should know going into this story. This is a short story that takes place in the Magic the Gathering universe, but don't fret. You don't need to know how to play the card game to enjoy the lore. You just need a little bit of background information, and I'm here to help. First off, this story stars Vivian Reed, a dark-skinned, green-eyed planeswalker with some seriously badass archery skills. Vivian carries with her the Arc Bow, a magical artifact weapon attuned to her specifically. The Arc Bow captures spirits of beasts Vivian encounters in order to summon those spirits to her side as magical artillery in battle. As I said earlier, Vivian is a planeswalker, which is basically an extremely unique person or creature within the multiverse that has the special ability to travel between planes of existence. Think of the planes as other worlds that are not aware of each other, with few exceptions. And in this case, Vivian has found herself on board a ship on the plane of Ixalan, a jungle-esque plane inhabited by vampires, merfolk, pirates, and just when you think it couldn't get any weirder, dinosaurs. She is also coincidentally the star of Magic's newest set, Aquarium, Land of Behemoths, which is a beautiful kaiju themed set following Wizard of the West Coast partnership with the legendary film studio Toho. So look out, Godzilla and Mothra fans, because yes, they are both in this new set of cards. And so is Baby Godzilla. Yes. So, with Aquaria in mind, I thought it would be appropriate to celebrate Vivian's most recent appearance by reading you this story. And I plan on finishing it in a few more small installments during future updates. You can also find this story online at Wizards of the West Coast's website if you'd like to read along or read ahead if you feel so inclined. And with that, thank you for listening to this update. Sit back, please stick around to enjoy the beginning of Unbowed by Cassandra Kaw. So I have changed into my cheetah print onesie jammies, and I am ready to read the beginning of Unbowed by Cassandra Kaw with you tonight. I just wanted to kind of issue a little bit of a warning. This is a bit of a graphic story. It has violence type themes, so I just wanted to put that out there just in case that was an issue for anybody who might be listening before we get started. But without further ado, here is the beginning of Unbowed by Cassandra Kaw. You speak with fish as well. Mademoiselle, your skills are without number. The eels receded into the water at the sound of the man's voice, a lean baritone, yet unused to manhood. Not that it had ever had the occasion to mature. Vivian raked a considered look across the new arrival's countenance, taking in the saturnine features, the boyish softness of his mouth, his bloodless complexion. Vampires were eternal, both in habit and biology. Vivian unfolded to her feet. She was tall and brown and muscled in a way that compelled troubadours to think of knights in disguise. Her dark hair held back in a pragmatic ponytail. If Vivian was beautiful, no one had yet thought to remark upon the fact, more concerned perhaps by her martial demeanor and the cold, sated intensity of her regard. The sea billowed and lapped at the ship, hurling jeweled foam into the air. I talk to fish as much as I talk to dinosaurs. Vivian adjusted the placement of the arc bow, its ligature warm even through her doublet. Frederick, the vampire huntsman who'd elected himself her escort, spent a night and handfuls of a morning endeavoring to convince her the weapon needed to be stowed away, swaddled in oil paper, kept safe from the abrasive salt air. But Vivian refused. She would sooner be flayed than parted from the relic. Crooked and bright as a spine sleeved in silver, the last piece of scala outside of her own skin and tendons. So, what you are saying is that you're versed in their very dialect, acquainted with their smiles, and gifted at interpreting their native anecdotes? Frederick beamed as though he expected to be rewarded for his grandiosity. He smelled of blood and brine and frankincense, a butcher at church. And even after days in his company, Vivian couldn't bring herself to untense in his presence. I'm saying I don't speak to fish. One of the eels rose to interrogate her with a look. Agate eye bisected by a rectangular pupil, goat-like and animate, only to be chased away by the lowing of the ship's prize captive, a juvenile brontodon. The dinosaur was too big for its prison. Both tail and throat tendrilled from portholes on each side of the vessel, endlessly beset by gulls and gulperfish. As well as Vivian could infer, the creature did not sleep, only moaned and howled through the hours. You do, however, speak to dinosaurs. A lascivious wagging of his brows. Behind him, Frederick's crew swarmed and seethed and shouted in a sublimely acrobatic creole. Vivian could only pick out one word in 8, the others 2 slang-tangled and lurid flourishes. But their excitement required no translation. Home was but a horizon away. She plucked the last of the fruit from her bucket and flung it at the brontodon, succulent vegetal flesh dripping sugar like beads of buckwheat honey. The reptile snapped its mouth close around the morsel, guzzling a ragged scavenger bird in the bargain. It gazed dolefully at her and trumpeted in misery again. No. Then, how do you explain what we saw? How do you explain the majesty of you standing there, a hand stretched to the beast? It takes Luneau entire expeditions to return with but one of these beasts. But you sought them alone. Mademoiselle, you are either gifted or magic or both. Frederick twirled a hand upward and then paused, an anticipatory smile hunching his lips. Unfortunately for the vampire, Vivian had ceased paying attention. There will be medical attention waiting for the brontodon, I hope. It will, like every new specimen, received the finest attentions of the royal menagerie. Frederick palmed his breastbone and bowed low. Vivian took note of how he abstained from a direct answer and how glibly he smiled, filing both observations away behind a grimace she, if questioned, would blame on the wind. The planeswalker tired of the simpering, the subtle innuendos, the strata of meaning layered one over another. Frederick's every word weighted with a multiplicity of nuance. Not for the first time, Vivian found herself regretting her decisions. She should have run them from the jungles. But Frederick, effete yet earnest, had so very many stories of a royal menagerie, more impressive than myth, so enormous it held entire ecosystems behind its gilded teeth. What a trousseau of rarities, what treasures! Like nothing Vivian would ever see again this lifetime or the next. The planeswalker bent and scooped the bucket into the crook of an arm, wiping her fingers on her breeches. As skiffs, each the same tint of pearl as distant Luno, came to circle the ship, the sailors began a lusty, laughing shanty, one full of husbands and husbandry, and what debauchery can be achieved between the two. Frederick looked over his shoulder, smiled, as false as the words to follow. I should apologize for my men. No, that is quite all right, Vivian said. It is about what I expect of civilized people. It took exactly 20 minutes for Luno, all Byzantine alleys and Baroque balconies, to turn its stained sea glass eye onto Vivian, and another 10 for it to decide that the planeswalker wasn't worth the trouble. Vivian pulled on the human pickpocket's hair until his neck bent like his scruples, until there was barely room for air to slick down his windpipe. Then, and only then, did Vivian lean down, teeth an inch from his ear. Do we understand each other? The pickpocket squeaked like the hinges of a rusted skeleton lock. Mercy, mistress! A cup of my blood as penance! His shoulders scissored back as Vivian gave another tug. Luno, already bored with the spectacle, drowsed around them. Its vampire dock hands and its sailors made conversation with the human fishermen, while aproned women, each at least as tall and brawny as Vivian, gutted oversized sturgeons by the water. Save for Frederick, no one paid mind to the pickpocket's plight, and even the vampire, a half smile in its customary seat, seemed only amused. What is he talking about? Vivian's flesh pimpled in the limp, listless breeze. Frederick sank into a crouch and cupped the pickpocket's chin in one gloved hand. With the other, he brought forward a dirk. This is the currency of Luno, mademoiselle. Vivian loosened her grip while keeping a knee wedged between the pickpocket's shoulders, eyes going wide. Her gaze flicked to the proffered weapon, held out to her hilt first. What do you expect me to do with this? Did you not hear him? Another of the vampire's easy, effervescent laughs. He wishes to offer you a cup of blood. No, I heard the boy, Vivian hissed. What do you expect me to do with his blood? I suppose that would depend on the current exchange rate. But I imagine you'd at least be able to finance a new wardrobe. Your proletariat nature isn't without its charm. However, I think the royals would be flattered if you changed your manner of dress for them. He dragged the red wag of muscle that was his tongue over his teeth, and Vivian couldn't help but think of a leech, so blood-bloated it shone red as fresh paint. Or, if you're feeling generous, you could give him over to me. The church espouses use of the criminal element. The planeswalker slapped the dirk away. No. Mercy, mistress! The pickpocket panted like a dog forgotten on death's door. Mercy! I only wanted to leave Luno. Leave Luno? Frederick let go of the pickpocket's chin and stood, his silhouette bladed and burnished by the moonlight slanting through the alleys. A knot of nuns paused to review the tableau. The hems of their flowing mother-of-pearl habits teethed with gold. And what will you do outside this island? Join the Brazen Coalition? Those ruffians don't allow for anything but the most competent sailors. Perhaps you think to find a city yet civilized by the church? I suppose you could, but there you would need to work. You would not be able to pay for your food and your housing with drops of ruby from your vein. No, monsieur, you will not leave Luno. There is no space for you outside of these. Vivian lifted her voice over Frederick. Not high enough for the timbre to hoarsen or hitch, but enough to signal she was glutted on the vampire's rhetoric. She rose, fingers gliding over the arc bow. The pickpocket stayed wisely supine. If I were a different woman, a more cynical one, I'd say you were bullying this boy into accepting his lot as livestock, and that Luno, pretty as a fresh minted coin, is nothing but a glorified abattoir. Oh, you wound me, mademoiselle. His imperiousness dissipated, fat melting on an eager tongue. In its place, a new substrate of slyness, worse for its reprobate swagger. Luno is hardly a stockyard. If anything, I suppose you might call us a halfway house, which takes payment in blood. Do you despite the lion as well? Do you take offense at the fact it will not eat grain, but instead prefers the meat of a lamb? The right of redemption isn't without its consequences. We drink blood because we must, but we aren't barbaric about it. Frederick cocked his head, the breeze coiling through his tiered curls. A cup here, a portion there. Nothing that might kill the mortal citizenry. We have timetables. And to Vivian's revulsion, he pouted. As for the matter of the boy, Frederick sighed. I suppose I might have misstepped. But the Legion of Dusk does see itself as caretaker of Ixalan. Here in Luno, we have the facilities to take care of people like him. But the rest of the world isn't so lucky. And what manner of gentry would we be if we did not do our part to protect these lands? And the Brontodon? The myriad wildlife you dragged across the water to Luno? Is that for the same purpose? Vivian tapped the pickpocket with the curved edge of the arc bow. Go, she mouthed, and the boy fled down the pier. Into Luno, proper where the building stood pale and lustrous as cream. Preservation, mademoiselle. You never know when a species might go extinct. Ixalan is such a savage, unforgiving place. That smile again, as though they were all accomplices to the same good-natured lie. But please, we have wasted enough time. The wonders of Luno cannot be encompassed by words. Let me show you my city, and perhaps then you will begin to see how wrong you were to assume poorly of us. Alrighty, so that will be all until next time. Join me again to find out what Vivian discovers in Luno. Thanks for joining, everybody. Stay safe.